Morning, everyone. This by-election, I don't think is actually going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to have an election before this happens or before this matters. Okay, so here's the Toronto Star, and they are saying Maxime Bernier and Marcy Ian running in two Toronto by-elections called for October 26th. And, well, I don't know that this is going to happen. I think that there's a lot happening with regards to the throne speech and with regards to the speech that Trudeau made last night. There's a lot of people's reactions I'm going to show you. I'm going to tell you about what Trudeau said last night at his address. It was basically the throne speech. He was just pasting his face on top of Governor General Payette's face. So here's Global News reporting, fate of Trudeau's minority government hangs in the balance as Parliament sets. The fate of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's minority government hangs in the balance as Parliament resumes all normal operations Thursday for the first time in 6 months. Opposition parties will give their official response to Wednesday's speech from the throne, but they've already signaled that Trudeau can't count on support from any of them to survive the eventual confidence vote and avoid plunging the country into an election in the midst of a second wave of the deadly COVID-19 pandemic. The Conservatives were unequivocal. They will not support the throne speech. The Bloc Québécois was almost as categorical. Bloc MPs will not consider supporting the throne speech unless Trudeau agrees to fork over at least $28 billion more each year in unconditional transfer payments to provinces for healthcare, as demanded unanimously last week by premiers. Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet is giving the government just 1 week to accede to that demand in the expectation that the confidence vote on the throne speech will take place next week. That leaves the NDP as the Liberals' most likely dance partner, but the NDP's leader, Jagmeet Singh, has conditions of his own, legislation ensuring that Canadians left jobless due to the pandemic won't have their emergency benefits cut, and that Canadians who fall ill will get paid sick leave. I think probably the Trudeau government's going to do those things. I think probably that's what's going to happen. I hope not. But at the same time, I don't know what an election solves, right? I don't see the Trudeau Liberals losing power. I think a strong 30% of people really like the Liberals. And then there's a mushy 20% that are willing to be browbeaten over all of the garbage anti-racism stuff and Black Lives Matter Marxism and all of that stuff. They're willing to be browbeaten into a vote for the Liberals because, they're the best at this. Yeah, right. Sure. Look at we. And we doesn't get talked about, right? The whole throne speech was a farce. It was a list of the UN's demands, and with critical race theory and systemic racism and all those buzzwords, all the garbage lies that we've been living for the past year and a half. That was the throne speech. It was BS. Garbage. It stank to high heaven. Garbage. Okay, back to this. The government must allow 6 days. I scroll down. There's a whole bunch of speculation. They go through what the throne speech promised. It's all garbage. It's just garbage. Okay, back to this. The government must allow for 6 days of debate on the throne speech, but they don't have to be consecutive days. Blanchet said he and Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole, both of whom are currently in isolation after testing positive for COVID-19, are to join the debate on Tuesday. No date has been set for the vote, but when it comes, the government will need the support of at least one of the main opposition parties to avoid being defeated. Under a motion passed unanimously on Wednesday, all parliamentary functions are now restored, albeit with a new hybrid model House of Commons. Until at least December 11th, only a small number of MPs will be physically present in the chamber, while the rest will participate virtually, including taking part in roll call via video conference. I don't like this. This appears to be changing how the House of Commons does business. Can you roll call from Oklahoma? Michelle Rumpel-Garner? Can you? Because it seems like, it doesn't matter where you are, your Mexican villa, your Chinese appointed apartment, wherever you want to be. Just govern Canada from wherever you are, because we are there to meet you. Forget our traditions, forget how Parliament works, forget the fact that, I was at the bus stop with parents, and I said, do you know how many people the flu kills under 19 yearly averaged out over the last couple of years? And they said no. And I said 34 people. Do you know how many people under 19 COVID kills? They said no. I said 1. I said, I don't fear sending my children to school during flu season. I just don't. And I don't think that makes me into a bad person. And I don't fear going out without a mask during flu season because the flu kills a lot of people, right? I don't fear it. And I don't fear it during COVID time. So it is very, very incredible to see all of our traditions, parliamentary traditions, 150 years of history. Just, it's a scary virus, everyone. It's a scary virus. What is a doctor going to do for you for a virus? If you test positive for a virus, the doctor says, go home, have some water, rest, feel better. If it doesn't clear up in a couple of days, maybe there's something else going on, but it'll clear up in a couple of days or it won't get worse, right? And if you have to go on a ventilator, fine, you have to go to a hospital, but don't ventilators not work? Okay. I'm getting waylaid on COVID, and I'm going to do a whole separate video on COVID. But I wanted to focus on the throne speech. The throne speech talks a lot about COVID. It's a lot of promises to, this is one. Liberals pledge in throne speech to create 1 million jobs during the pandemic recovery. They pledged to plant 2 billion trees. It was an election campaign, right? Like there's all sorts of promises, and you'll hear all of them through the video. I didn't just want to read Global News's overview of it, right? Asked whether there is a limit on how aggressively the Canadian government can spend, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland responds, "Do you know when COVID-19 is going to end?" Yes, actually, yes. It ended when the month of September didn't have a single death in Toronto. That's when it ended. And it ended because we don't need to comply with this. Like, the reason people are complying is because you're scaring them half to death. But if anybody with any rational thought or articulation talked about how dangerous this actually was to people, nobody would do this stuff. It's crazy. Here's the Wall Street Journal. Canada's finance minister vows aggressive spending until the pandemic is over. Market talk. So this is outside of the throne speech, but I just wanted to pepper that in there. They're all on board for this. They're all on board for spending. Spend, spend, spend. Andrew Lawton said, despite Western alienation being on the rise, the throne speech didn't address it at all. National unity not addressed, nor were Alberta and Saskatchewan, save for a passing reference that had nothing to do with the critical issues those provinces are facing. Here's the Financial Post. Canada will spend big to combat the coronavirus, says now is not the time for austerity. Austerity just means spending within your means, like not spending more than you can afford. The Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. This is a real tweet from the real Deputy Prime Minister, and there are 33 likes and 7 retweets and 3 comments, and it's 15 hours. This is incredible. The public doesn't like this. Nobody likes this. She says, the speech from the throne is an ambitious plan for an unprecedented reality to build a stronger and more resilient Canada for everyone. Read the full throne speech. So you can read the whole throne speech if you want to read it. It's full of UN talking points and garbage propaganda and nonsense, right? We're gonna there's a whole section on anti-racism, stamping out racism online hate, mean tweets. Like, mean tweets are the biggest thing facing Canada right now. Okay, here's Scott Moe on the throne speech. He says Saskatchewan was barely mentioned in today's throne speech, and when we were, it was about phasing out our energy industry workers. The NDP have indicated they will support this throne speech, propping up a government that ignores the priorities of our province. Here's Scott Moe.
The only time in this speech from the throne that Saskatchewan was essentially mentioned was in the phase out of our energy industry workers. That in no way provides me with any relief of the direction of this current government. We're going to be watching very closely as we see the Federal Conservative Party and the Bloc have indicated they're likely not going to be supporting it. We have concerns that the NDP will be supporting a speech from the throne where the only highlight of Saskatchewan is that we're going to phase out one of the largest industries and one of the industries that creates employment for people across this province. That's not something I could support, and it's not something I would expect that any Canadian MP would support. The only time in this speech from the throne
my mic. Not something that any Canadian MP could support. So he's, as the Premier, he's saying, I don't see how any member of Parliament could ever support this plan that doesn't address our province and specifically calls out our province to wind down one of the biggest employers. Like, this is wild. We can't do this. We can't support this. An NDP government, a supposedly government for the people, to protect the people, right, is going to probably support it, right? I mean, are the NDP popular in Saskatchewan? They're not anymore. Jason Kenney says, Alberta is disappointed that instead of listening to Canada's provinces, the federal government doubled down on policies that will kill jobs, make Canada poorer and weaken national unity. Full statement. Earlier today, at StatsCan showed the steepest decline ever for resource sector jobs. 43,000 people lost their jobs. Every one of these loss represents a family disrupted, uncertainty of how to pay the bills or mortgage, questions on how folks are going to get food on the table. In a 6,783-word throne speech, not one word recognizing the crisis facing Canada's largest industry, energy sector supporting 800,000 jobs. Instead, we got a litany of policies to strangle investment, jeopardize resource jobs, and when we most need an industry generating 20% of government revenues. I want to be clear, it's not just Alberta's energy sector that needs Canada right now. For a real recovery, Canadians need Alberta's energy. Albertans have made a net contribution of $600 billion plus via transfers to the rest of Canada to build roads, schools, hospitals, and critical Canadian infrastructure. Even conservative estimates from experts and economists show the global demand for oil increasing over the next 20 years. What that means is that Alberta's energy sector will remain a vital part of Canada's economy for generations. But for that to happen, the federal government must do no harm. That's why today we are fighting the constitutional Trojan horse of the federal carbon tax at the Supreme Court of Canada, and why we will be in court to fight the No More Pipelines Bill C-69 in the coming weeks. And so he's talking about policies that strangle jobs and kill the industry that has paid for the standard of living that we enjoy in Canada. Without oil and gas, we can't stay warm in the wintertime. There's not enough sunlight, not enough daily sunlight to power your home in a winter day. I'm sorry. 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours of sunlight does not give enough energy to power your home. And what if it's cloudy or if there's a snowstorm? It just doesn't work. Wind doesn't work. Geothermal, I don't know. Can you heat your home and power all of your electronics with geothermal? I don't think so. I don't believe that's viable. I think that it would be the same thing as saying, man, if only I could fly to work. You know, that would be wonderful if I could just fly to work. Wouldn't that be great? And then people saying, you can. All you have to do is believe. Like, no. Jump off the building. Jump off the building. I don't think I'd do that in the Matrix. Even if I knew I was in the Matrix, I'm not making that jump. Okay, CTV Power Play. Did the government hit the right notes in their throne speech today? What I heard was a government that wants to have an election, but wants someone else to trigger it. It's 41 seconds of speaking. I'll leave it. I'm not going to play it right now just because it doesn't really matter. Basically, the main point is what I heard was a government that wants to have an election but wants someone else to trigger it. Here's more throne speech reaction. Senator Denise Batters says, in throne speech, Trudeau government fails to address urgency of Western alienation and economic turmoil facing Alberta and Saskatchewan. Only reference to energy industry was about need for clean tech. Only Alberta reference, same topic. Saskatchewan, same. And COVID app. Oh yeah, the COVID app. Oh, I was going to talk about Thanksgiving, but yeah, he used the address to the public to push the COVID app. I bet he got hundreds of downloads. Okay, Canna Girl says Candice Bergen was speaking about how this throne speech was a diversion from the WE scandal. No money for energy or agriculture, no money for fishermen. Yeah, Candice Bergen says CPC Deputy Leader Candice Bergen says the Conservatives won't vote in favor of the throne speech. Nope, they say. And here's Huffington Post says Trudeau appeals to Canadians after Tories and Bloc say they can't support the throne speech. Parliament resumes full operations today, and we started that at the top. Blacklock's reporter is reporting committees back by October 19th. So he being Trudeau, prorogued Parliament on the middle of August 23rd or something to that effect, and prorogued Parliament till September 23rd. That's a month. And now we don't get committees back until October 19th. 2 months? A break for a whole summer off from WE scandal, and then we get to have that back, and then the Christmas break. You know, this is so calculated. It's like watching a baseball game or the last 2 minutes of a football game, and these guys know how to control the clock, right? They've got control of the ball, they've got control of the clock, and they're in your 45. I don't watch sports. They're probably closer than 45 then. Here's Minister of Families, Ahmed Hassan. He says it will take a number of years for a national childcare system to be realized. So they promised a national childcare system in yesterday's throne speech, and it will obviously take years. I think that we've got problems that we need to deal with and solve before we open up brand new federal agencies and protocols that need staffing, etc. Like, these guys are delving into the provincial giving service. Like, they're delving into the provincial jurisdiction, of supplying service to Canadians directly, rather than managing the country in a responsible way. And I think that that's not responsible. I think that that's overstepping their rights as the federal government and coming into provinces to deliver a national childcare system. It's not responsible. It's not good governance. They're making promises to buy votes, right? It's provincial politics writ large across the entire country. Here's Anthony Furey. He says, all of that just to turn the page from the WE saga. Sheesh. And we have to wait until October 19th, right? If we don't get plunged into an election. And if we get plunged into an election, will that just wipe everything away? Well, they lost their power, so, the WE scandal goes uninvestigated. And I mean, Duffy got charged, right? He had to pay money. Anyway, regardless, I think he got charged, and then he was exonerated, right? Like he was not guilty on any of the charges. Anyway, Robin Urbach says, lots of big promises in this throne speech: national childcare program, accelerated pharmacare, 1 million jobs, crackdown on web giants, national long-term care standards. Not a lot by way of details or timelines, of course. The web giants thing is very interesting, and 1 million new jobs. That wasn't qualified really by anything. That was kind of like, yeah, 1 million new jobs. New like post-pandemic new, or new like in addition to what we like after we recover from the pandemic, 1 million new jobs there. Are the jobs all planting trees, or are they all on Twitter pushing liberal newspeak ideology? Ministry of Truth jobs? Yeah? Okay. Candace Malcolm says the throne speech had a specific section on addressing systemic racism. And the very first step to do this is by taking action on online hate. Can someone explain how mean tweets constitute systemic racism? I have a feeling, and it's not just me, there are other people who do kind of what I do, but I can't help feel a little targeted by the stuff that they're when they talk about a link tax, and you look at my my website here, and it's all links, right? Like every time you share a link, that's illegal. I have a feel like, not that they're just directly targeting me specifically, but people like me who put links together and say, look, see, it's crazy what they're saying. Because of all of these other facts that don't back up the crazy things that they're saying. And so I think that it's very concerning that the government is making moves to censor social media, to crack down on web giants and online hate. This is not the environment where you want to open a business and say, oh yeah, we're going to settle down in Canada and we're going to have a long life. You're looking for the exits. If you're half intelligent, you're looking to get out of this draconian tyrant of a leader who wants to crack down on all this stuff. If people are let the UFO people and the flat earth people, they can all have their conspiracy theories and they can talk whatever nonsense they want. But if you say, hey, maybe this COVID thing's a little bit off, well, you're shut down completely. Like I've got in my next video, and I'm doing a COVID video today, you should watch it. Randy Hiller is shut down by the Ontario legislator, the Speaker of the House, everybody, and they ridicule his questions. He actually uses my comparison of the Emperor's new clothes. We're living the Emperor's new clothes. He says, like, this is crazy. Why is nobody responding to these facts? And he gets shut down. It's very concerning. So, like, systemic racism, these are the biggest issues. Rolling out national childcare. Here is the address to the nation. Power and Politics says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is set to address the nation tonight. Nationally broadcast addresses from Canadian prime ministers are a rare occurrence. They usually happen only during times of war, constitutional or political crisis. See more from whatever. It's interesting too because Justin Trudeau did daily breakfast briefings. So like people are used to seeing him talk like this, and there was nothing new in this. Like I've seen more meaty breakfast briefings with him than this little 10-minute speech. In the 10-minute speech though, he says Thanksgiving's done, y'all. No Thanksgiving for you. Don't you dare get together with your families. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, the fines to say, oh, if you do, that's it. We're going to prove that all these cases came from Thanksgiving and we're going to just lock you all down further. I think that they're setting this up. And now I was not incorrect necessarily. He used his address to the nation to underline how scary COVID-19 is. But he didn't institute the nationwide fines. He didn't beg people to stay home and listen to their didn't do the Boris Johnson thing, like your friend's grandmother might die because of your cough, right? Like he didn't use those scare tactics. But he does clearly say, and this is just a minute of the speech. The speech was like 11 minutes. You can watch the whole thing. Link is in the description. But it's all of the throne speech stuff. We're going to help Canadians and blah 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 blah. But none of the recognizing any of the really important metrics. ICU is stable, hospitalizations are stable and not increasing, deaths are very low. The last death in Toronto was August 28th. There's a lot of good news, right? Like we could be celebrating as a nation, but instead, fear, fear, fear. Here's Trudeau's address last night.
Biggest provinces. The second wave isn't just starting, it's already underway. The numbers are clear. Back on March 13th, when we went into lockdown, there were 47 new cases of COVID-19. Yesterday alone, we had well over 1,000. We're on the brink of a fall that could be much worse than the spring. I know this isn't the news that any of us wanted to hear. And we can't change today's numbers or even tomorrow's. Those were already decided by what we did or didn't do 2 weeks ago. But what we can change is where we are in October and into the winter. It's all too likely we won't be gathering for Thanksgiving, but we still have a shot at Christmas.
Well, benevolent Trudeau says you can have your Christmas. You can have your Christmas, but not Thanksgiving. Not Thanksgiving. And if too many people have Thanksgiving, you don't get Christmas. Or you don't get Christmas. It's less of a Batman. It's very hard to do the Trudeau growl. I'll have to work on it. Here is Don Martin. And I think that it's interesting. They put an entire piece up here about the throne speech above Don Martin's takedown of it. Okay, I'm going to read through this. This is an opinion piece. We're almost done this one, and we're going to listen to one more thing, and then I've got a whole COVID video, because the COVID stuff is just nuts. It's just wild. It's so wild that I have to put a point on it. So it's very, very crazy. Okay, back to this. Don Martin says, the Prime Minister talks Turkey in a political address to the nation. What was that? A Prime Minister calling for time across Canadian airwaves is a big deal, and thus very rarely done. It is not allowed to be a political posturing. It is supposed to be a 5-alarm siren on a matter of national significance from a Prime Minister who believes urgent information must be fed directly to Canadian ears. So what does Justin Trudeau do when his demand for 15 minutes of unedited access to the airwaves was granted under the assumption that it not be political? In that weird breathlessness he saves for his most dramatic conversations, Trudeau warned Canadians their Thanksgiving turkey is likely cooked by the coronavirus, and they might as well cancel the family feast now. Then he dangled their faint hopes of a Christmas salvation if we wear masks, download the government COVID-19 tracking app, and get a flu shot. Yeah, the flu shot thing is so weird. I'm not getting a flu shot. Sorry about your luck. You're doubling down on the vaccine? Get bent. See you later. Okay, back to this. That glum scenario hardly qualifies as a news bulletin material being released by a leader with unique insights to share. It barely rates as a news story, being the parroting of what public health officials have already said about the second wave being upon many of us. And then Trudeau dived into an overly partisan listing of government actions already taken and those to come, provided that the throne speech gets passed by Parliament. It was political grandstanding masked as a public service message, a transparent and shallow attempt to paste Trudeau's face over the throne speech highlight reel instead of leaving all the televised clips to a disinterested reading by scandal-tainted Governor General Julie Payette. Not to be outdone with this flexing of prime ministerial power, Trudeau's opposition rivals jumped on the free political advertising bandwagon with highly partisan televised reactions of their own. Clearly, the last week or two have given Canadians an ominous preview of COVID cases building into a tsunami-sized wave on case projection charts. It's an emerging emergency which could have justified a national address provided Trudeau's 6,000-word action plan had not been read to rapture-level media coverage just 4 hours earlier. All he did in the primetime address was echo the throne speech's pandemic as a priority one and repeat the ways his government will help millions of Canadians through the approaching winter of self-isolation discontent. I scroll down a little bit. It's a safe bet Canada will be 2 billion trees shy of the 2 billion trees this government again promised to plant in the Wednesday speech by the time we head to the polls. That and most of the other non-pandemic initiatives will be quickly moved to the back burner. But getting back to the address, for Trudeau to graft his message onto the throne speech was a blatant duplication for purely political purposes. Here's hoping the next time Trudeau demands access to the nation's airwaves, the networks will say his turkey was cooked in 2020 when he deemed a threat to Thanksgiving worthy of a national broadcast alert. And well done. I was like Mr. Martin. He's quite good. And here are the talking heads. Basically, they're saying this was a bad idea, and the networks shouldn't have done this. This was a mistake on the part of the networks. It may have served the Prime Minister's interest, but it is not a precedent that should be repeated. And here's somebody talking about it. Rosemary sets it up, and here we go.
Said yesterday when she said we are at a crossroads. To me, that seems like hinting at a crisis at very least.
Hinting at a crisis at the very least. Oh, we're close to a crisis, so we should have the prorogue Parliament, shut down all the WE investigations, and do a complete green reset. Hinting at a crisis. Great job, Rosemary.
So you don't agree?
So we have a parliament for dealing with these matters. That is where the affairs of the nation are supposed to be transacted, so that we are all together in one chamber where you can address it, where questions can be addressed to them, etc. But this kind of taking out free time on the airways for what is essentially a party political advertisement, in my view, is not in keeping with our traditions as a country and not in service to the public interest.
Okay, let's get everyone.
So, I mean, tradition is important and serving the public interest is important. And I mean, Trudeau didn't really tell the networks the truth, but he did give them their speech ahead of time, so they knew what he was going to say. And I've heard suggestions of charging the Liberals for the airtime they use, which I think would be very funny. They should probably do that. But what are you going to do? The political grandstanding, the political maneuvering is going to continue to happen, and Trudeau's going to push his advantage as much as he can, because that's what he does. And I mean, when you stop looking at this as a game of people in politics trying to serve the public directly, and stop looking at it at the micro level, like one-to-one, right? Like, I'm serving you, and start looking at it at the macro numbers. These people are playing to maintain power and win, right? That's it. Like, there isn't a consideration for, can we keep these promises in an effective way? 25% reduction in phone bills, 2 billion trees. The 2 billion trees is just ridiculous anyway. They're doubling down on it. The use of the masks mandate, the use of the lockdowns, and we can prove that the lockdowns don't work. The masks don't work to stop spread of respiratory virus. This is well-known science, right? Like, this is, and as far as the lockdowns, we have new science that can show that lockdowns aren't working. Lockdowns aren't working to stop this. So, well, what do, right? If you're Trudeau and you play to win, you use your media and you use your advantage as much as possible. It's a game of power. It's a game of win. And he's playing to win. And I really believe that the other parties don't understand what they're up against. The other parties are bringing potentially that macro level of, we're trying to serve you as government. And they don't understand what the Trudeau Liberals understand, in that if you make enough promises, enough people will believe you and they'll vote for you. And then they'll get mad, but they can't do anything after they get mad. And you have to wait 2 months to even talk about the WE scandal. You see? Playing to win, using all advantages, using proroguing. Harper did it too. Harper did it as effectively as Justin, except in the last election, right? And that's unfortunate. That's Canada's loss, because he would have been a better leader through this, because, I mean, at least he would have had a finance minister who understood what finances are, right? Not a socialist envoy for George Soros. Yeah. Demonetize my video. I don't care. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I'm doing another video like right now, so there'll be 2 videos up.